Welcome to the Postgame, everybody. Welcome to all of you patrons, best people on earth. And of course, thanks to everybody on the team. We appreciate all of you. Hope everybody's staying strong and staying safe. Continuing on with us is our friend, Matt Christman, of course. Check him out, first and foremost, at Chapo Trap House. But also, Matt, I'm sorry. I'm kind of off my usual TV anchor game here. You have a Twitch channel you're doing a lot of stuff on now, right? I should have done this up top, but we'll clip this for later. But talk about all the ways that people can get into the Matt Christman experience.
Well, yeah, the podcast, obviously. I was for a while during the first couple months of COVID. I probably did a daily stream on Instagram, and then later on Twitch. I took almost a week off, but I had one today, and I'm going to be doing them on a, if not nightly, semi-nightly basis, around 6 o'clock.
Awesome. We talked about dialectics, which is definitely something that you and I resonate on. What else has just been what else has been on your mind and in your process?
I've been trying to formulate just a way of talking or thinking about politics that breaks the spell, I guess, that has pervaded over people, whereby because there's no such thing as a social, being in this country, people have completely adhered to the sort of the wire mother of online to form their political identities and to provide the totality of their political worldview. And I know I'm part of that. I'm literally embedded in it because I that's where people find my stuff. But I've been trying to just express and synthesize a way to tell people to stop being on the internet while watching me on the internet, which is inherently a conflict, but one that I feel like it's really my only hope, because I've lost any kind of faith that any good can come from politics as it's currently practiced by people who, for most people who have even the best of intentions.
Yeah, it's funny looking back on if you read a great classic critique of television by Neil Postman, right? I think It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the first wave of theories of the internet were this is the opposite. It's an active, not passive medium. So that's going to mean that it's going to be this technology that people are going to participate in. They're going to build new communities in. And it's well, number one, that actually has happened. Not in mostly the positive ways that these people idealized it. And secondly, it's actually, it's like the even more consuming Amusing Ourselves to Death medium, because it can amuse you in the exact microsecond way you want it any second of the day.
Yes.
In complete atomization.
Yeah.
Was that inevitable because of the kind of origins of the internet, or has this been the path when we just turned it all over to the big four companies? What do you think the trajectory is of it?
I think the trajectory of all of these mass media, from television to the internet, really shows that the determining factor of the productive, mechanism. If you have a capitalist society, the introduction of a new piece of technology will destabilize to an extent, but over time will largely reify and accelerate every tendency within that mode of production. And that's what happened with television, and that's what's happening with the internet. And it's easy in the moment to lose that, especially with the internet, because of how deeply immersive it is, and how, unlike television, it gives the illusion of agency. Right. And I think that's the most insidious element of it.
The illusion. Talk more about the illusion of agency.
because you choose where you're going on the internet, and you can choose to express yourself on the internet, and then people can interact with you, it can make that act feel more consequential than it is. It can make the idea of a post, it can, because if you have political beliefs and you find yourself stymied in any way to act them out in your day-to-day life, which is true of most people, then you will try to find a place where you can. And because the internet is a relatively frictionless plane for personal expression, you find that you can do it there. And so what ends up happening is that you put all of the psychic energy associated with your politics, all of that will to power that drives the political belief, you can get all of that validated virtually. Right. And over time, you become so invested at that level that becomes the only politics that matter to you, because they're the only ones that are real. And it's where you're getting your meaning, and where it's easiest to get your meaning. And it leads you to, like I said, that paralysis of analysis, because since there's no action behind it, since you're not doing anything, you're not seeing your theories tested in any meaningful way, they're not being challenged and changed by contact with reality, you will never get anywhere. You will find yourself on a hamster wheel, but you will never even notice it, because you will still have conflict, you will still have enemies, you will still have fights that will feel to you in every respect like actual politics being exerted, but you have not done anything, you have not changed anything, and most importantly, you have not built anything with anyone else, which is literally what politics is.
Right. And then it leads to gossip, witch hunts, trivia, nonsense, bullshit, the elevation of basically just all sorts of toxic, petty nonsense, which can fuel drama instead of like actual effort. I mean, I think of, this is like very TMBS meta, and I probably shouldn't even do this because of it'll blow my voice out. But just, I was joking with a friend of mine about like the idea of some like incredible leader like Lula, and obviously I'm a big Lula stan and everything, but like taking his speeches on Brazil and on labor and on international affairs or whatever, and then sort of like turning them into like, and, this person also liked a post by someone who was affiliated with, another podcast or what, like just in the sense of the type of kind of like reams of nonsense that come out of online discourse that substitute for like actual politics. Like, this person liked that thing. This person said this. I heard that. Blah, 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 blah. And then actually at the end of the day, all you're doing is getting incentivized to do all of this by the mediums themselves, who just want you posting, no matter what it is. That's the only incentive structure.
That's where the mode of production kicks in, because all of these formats exist to be addictive, to make you post more. And it is very rare that posting more or expressing yourself more leads to better understanding. It usually does the opposite, because the more you are doing that, the less you are receptive to anything else. And I'd say one of the most insidious elements of it is that it also encourages this subconscious, almost, but also conscious, competitive framework, whereby everyone is trying to stand out from a crowd of people who all have similar politics. And that means that the only way that you can maintain that position is by outbidding people in extremity of belief. And that means detaching even further your politics from anything plausibly related to the real world. Because at this point, you're not actually engaging with the world. You're engaging with a hypothetical group of people with a group of totally hypothetical beliefs that don't intersect in any way with reality. And at that point, standing out means getting even further from reality.
Right, because that's the way you get the attention. That's when you get the eyeballs, and that's like mass movement politics and social media micro careers are not exactly synergized interests.
Yeah.
It reminded me of, I mean, the funniest manifestation of this, and this feels, let's indulge in a little nostalgia and trash Warren people for a second. Although, if you're on the streets now, if you voted for Elizabeth, I don't really hold almost anything against anybody forever. So, c'est la vie. But anyways, That being said, I thought it was the best post, and people would be I think people would be confused by this. I didn't really. There were people I knew who supported Warren, where it's like, yeah, of course, you're literally a fucking torts attorney. Like, obviously, you're going to support Elizabeth Warren. Sure, whatever. Oh, great. We'll see you later. But the most annoying and incredible and insipid was my class position and comfort is going to make me go for this like center left technocracy that has no, has no actual teeth to it. So I'll do like, I'm supporting Warren because of some identity stuff and because I think she's more and more, she has more plans or whatever the fuck. And, before you criticize me, I'm a Ho Chi Minhist third world.
Yeah.
It's like, well, excuse me, right? Of course.
The number of people who insisted that they're to the left of Bernie.
Right.
The fact is that no, you're not. No one was. Because what have you done? You've done shit. None of us have done anything. You're not to the left of anyone because you don't have politics. You just have opinions.
Right.
But being online solidifies those opinions in your mind and in your heart. And thanks to other people telling you, yes, you have these politics. You walk around thinking you basically, yes, I'm Ho Chi Minh over here. I'm Fred Hampton now because you think some things. Well, big fucking deal. Zero people were to the left of Bernie Sanders who complained about him because none of them had done anything.
They didn't do a fucking thing. This guy was fighting through a goddamn heart attack to get you health care.
Yeah.
I'm a polyamorous sunkerite.
Yeah, right.
With a post-capitalist, pre-space age exploration socialism. So don't tell me that I'm not to the left. It's like I remember actually the first time I lost patience with some idiot who was trying to run that rap on me in real life. And I was like, and I don't remember what I said, but I said something like, of course. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, as I like order my drink at this like fucking like outdoor bar in Brooklyn. I mean, like, we're all Maoists here, obviously. So, please. Yeah. It goes without saying. I mean, we're all obviously organizing a countryside peasant revolution in 1920s and 30s China. I mean, it's a given. I mean, just even that kind of like fantasy universe, even on terms of like the other way that the internet can just completely mash historical trajectories. So like you can have like that new show on Netflix, Hollywood, and it's in addition to just being unfunny, it's like, no, they didn't call people of color then. Yeah. And you should not write that they did because actually it's fucking insidious as hell.
I mean, that's what's so baffling. Like, you claim. I mean, if you want people to reckon with the historical reality of like racial apartheid in this country and its continuing effects on people, how is that helped by rewriting history to make it less racist than it really was, so that you can get points for being inclusive now? And it's like at the expense of any kind of historical understanding of how we got here.
Let's do a Nelson Mandela biopic where the apartheid authorities are like, "Yes, Queen."
Yeah,
and he's just like, "Thank you, but we are going to need to have a very hard conversation about your privilege." And that's what happened. That was how this might make you uncomfortable, F.W. de Klerk. All right, let me take one quick question from the Discord, and then let's play this Tucker Carlson clip. I'll just kind of throw this out there. Anybody jump on it. But this is very much in the online realm and media realm. But look, this is relevant for how this is going to be processed by most people, which will still be in front of the television set. What's the best way to push back against the violence and looting narrative? Most of these protests are peaceful, and the violence is coming primarily from right-wing saboteurs and police when they attempt to disperse peaceful crowds using rubber bullets and tear gas. I'm just going to say in reverse order, that's totally true. But I think the point that you're getting at is more difficult than that, because there's definitely people who are at these protests who are throwing bricks through windows. And I don't say that because I'm saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it because you can't do the left tactic of like, it's correct, but it's like sometimes things need to be dealt with on their own terms. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just say well, the real violence is X. So it's like, yes, it is the real violence, but probably like the person that you're thinking of is going to be worried about the brick through the window. And I don't have an easy answer for that, because look, I think an attack on any innocent person, I think there are lines we have to hold. I think if you see some random guy that owns a shop getting the shit beat out of him, yeah, you have to condemn that. And then, as I keep saying, I don't have if you come I just don't have a comment on it. Someone throws a brick through a Target, it might not be the most helpful image for the cable news. I have zero judgment on it. That is quite literally not my place.
I mean, what I would say along those lines is this is a reaction.
Yeah.
This is a response to a situation. And because we don't have a society that you can't condemn any movement for actions within it, because there's no guiding hand.
Mm-hmm.
And of course there are police. I mean, there's enough videos of cops smashing windows and piling bricks up to tell you that I don't know, anyone, there's an element in which you have to challenge the faith of any argument about that, because
True.
if you don't see the degree to which there is an obvious incentive and also followed through action on the part of police to disqualify these protests by allowing them to begin more violent. Look what happened last night in Manhattan. Giant groups of police officers standing around doing nothing. 2 blocks away, every storefront is being smashed open.
Yeah.
That's not accidental. How could it be? If it's accidental, then what are you defending the cops for? They're bad at their jobs. They're a bunch of Keystone dipshits. Clearly, it is in their interest to see that happen. But at the end of the day, this is all the whirlwind being reaped.
Right.
I think that it's
right.
I think it's really important, though, that we push back against a couple things here too. It's one, this outside agitator narrative is particularly dangerous, because a lot of people who are outside of these movements, they really resonate with this idea that anytime anything happens where a window gets smashed or there's some vandalism or whatever, that means that entire movement is now illegitimate, not even because it's violent, literally because there's some kind of secret group activating in politics. And it's really an example of the postmodern world that we're living in, where it's there is no real politics, right? It's everything is either on the Democrat side, it's the Russians are behind everything secretly, or Donald Trump is oh my God, all these illegals are voting, or whatever, story they're telling. So I think it's really important to not to get into a trap of saying that every kind of action that happens at these protests is one justified and moral or whatever. But you also just saying that look, these are chaotic events that happen when the police come and they start attacking people in the streets. When someone is hitting you with the club, or you're seeing people being tear gassed around you, the idea of law and order or normal society, it just completely disappears. So to try to have this kind of expectation that every individual in a movement is going to act in unison in that kind of chaos is completely absurd. I don't know. I don't think that there's going to be a talking point answer to that, as much as it's we just need to push back against this kind of the outside agitator thing, specifically materially. That's something that I think is very important that we don't
That's the big lie that's emerging.
Yeah, because that's something that's, and you know what, I'm sorry, this is a reality. It's we've, people, the Democrats and a lot of liberals have been allowing this kind of conspiratorial mindset to really fester in a way that's so dangerous over the past few years that I get really worried when I hear these stories, because there are a group of people in this country whose worldview has just been so warped. And, people still like follow like Louis Mensch, who's thoroughly discredited, right? He's talking about Steve Bannon being executed years ago, right? But people still follow her and like trust her as a source of information. It's like we have to understand like these kind of disinformation stuff is like very real, and we need to be taking it seriously. As silly as a lot of it is.
I think that the thing that, in my opinion, if you want to really push back on outside agitators, at this point, I would say the rejoinder is from where? Everywhere. What, people are just swapping?
Yeah, literally every state.
It's like, why would I want to protest in my city when I could do it over here? And then it's like an exchange program.
It's an exchange program.
That's easy enough to say it when there's a focus in St. Louis or Baltimore, but when it's everywhere, it's really hard. Unless you're thinking people are parachuting in from Russia, and if that's the case, then I think you're too far gone to really take.
But that would apply to the former national security advisor of the United States and ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, who did go on television and say that. And
these people are all on K2. That's the thing.
Yes. I mean, we are in the post game, so we can be honest. I mean, we're all in New York, but none of us have protested here. I mean, I've primarily split my time between Massachusetts and Philly.
Yeah, I've been in Georgia.
Right. Where did you go, Matt? Did you go Midwest for this?
Sorry.
I went to Toronto. I took a wrong turn trying to get fucked up.
Dakota, Matt?
They put me in New Zealand. I was a part of the New Zealand protest.
You guys are picking the Matts go to very chill places for this. I'm hoping I can do the Solidarity one in Amsterdam next.
No joke though, South Dakota was saying that there was outside agitators from Fargo, North Dakota coming down there.
Yeah, two guys in a tan Sierra. they went to a pancake place and then.
All right, let me read one more and then we will finally get to this Tucker shit. I want to apologize to the person that wrote this, because I think that maybe there's might be an attack that's being perceived here that's not real, but I'll just put this out. I'd like to counter your assumption that we're all acting in a meaningless void on the internet. We think that you're talking about your own disease. We use it to have public conversations with centrist to extreme conservative neighbors with actual results. We also use it to feed our neighbors, using it as a hub for an underground local economy, and so on.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, but it's a question of the totality. What is it more than it is not? Because of course the internet has a lot of uses that are valuable and that need to be encouraged. But what's the balance? It's things are rarely 50-50. They're usually 51-49 minimum. Right. And I would say that it's your job is not to pick which is an easier argument and then stick with that, because nothing is one thing. Most things are variated, and you can pick the good thing and decide that means that the internet is good. Or you can step back for a second and say that even though I use it for X, Y, and Z for useful, its totalizing influence is negative.
Yeah, and again, I just want to kind of keep pushing this point that when we talk in these terms, this is another reason. Yes, this is my fucking every show issue bashing of like the sort of like moralism culture across the board, from whether the fact that we need to actually allow people to change and grow and actually evolve, and that we cannot, try to run around controlling and morally perfecting people as like the big macro point. But even like in this small way, like we're not talking on personal terms here at all.
Yeah.
Like this is I know that there are probably tens of millions of people across the globe using digital technologies in positive ways, east, west, north, south, no question. I'd even be as presumptuous to say that, like, yes, I think to the extent the type of work we do, if it feeds people just kind of sitting in an online cul-de-sac, that's super unhelpful. But on the other hand, you absolutely do encounter people who say, like, hey, that was funny, helped me get through my day, or this inspired me to organize my campus for Bernie, or now I understand something about another country and I'm less of an asshole. Like, these are fucking great things. And it's not about it. I actually think, like, it really is just in general the anti-politics of personal responsibility. I'm saying that once you really get these base functions we're talking about, the part that people don't like is it is kind of difficult because it's like, not that much we can do really makes a difference. Yeah. So all of the kind of performativity and whatever, basically whatever. But then on the other hand, like, you trying and figuring it out and your neighbor, like, that should only evoke like solidarity and compassion. So it's not about a judgment of anyone's use. It's a context we're all using in.
Right. And I would say one of the biggest problems, and I don't know how you could argue that this is not a phenomenon, is that it's essentially impossible to publicly move towards a greater understanding or away from a hardened position, because you now have a record of saying X, Y, and Z. And as soon as you deviate from it, you will have people saying, you said this, and now you're saying this. And it becomes, as you said, a judgment of you as a person. It becomes like, you're not reasoning something out. You're not working towards something. You're flip-flopping, like you're John Kerry or something, because everyone now has, and what that ends up doing is, you don't want to look like you don't have convictions. So that means that even if you lose, even if you gain a greater nuance, you can't really express it in a way that could be productive, because it will undermine your credibility, because you have a record of things, of public statements that can be talked, that can be addressed.
And I want to just say, I think across the board, from people's former positions to actual mistakes to evolving worldviews, whatever, we need to really, like, we know there needs to be jubilees across the board. We need to get rid of debts in the so-called developing world that are still the products of ongoing economic colonialism. We need to get rid of people's medical debts. We need to get rid of people's student debts. We need to get rid of people's online debts. And there even needs to be a getting rid of psychic debts, frankly. Like, not because, like, oh, whatever, just repeat yourself. It has to be coupled with genuine change and growth. But you cannot incentivize genuine change and growth if you don't have this broader set of resetting. And I actually think overall, just even the trajectory of our politics, if you have any type of radical humane politics, that's like an across the board demand right now. We need a jubilee. We need a reset. It needs to be cleaned, and it needs the capacity to be cleaned as an ongoing practice.
And what that demands of people is at that level of the internet is just a generosity, as giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Giving people the benefit that they're operating in good faith. And that's another element that the internet basically militates against, because we don't know anybody. Everyone is just a name on a screen. We have no way of trusting them. So we end up relying almost entirely on shibboleths of phraseology to determine friend from foe. And then that hardens into the only thing we believe, because it's the only way to navigate the territory. And that means that there's this terror at like dropping that, because then you've dropped your guard. But you only feel like you need to be on guard because you assume that everyone is out to get you, is lying about what they really want, is actually on some sort of long con and grip, which of course is made harder by the fact that some people are. But
right.
If there was, as you said, a greater degree of compassion towards other people and a benefit of the doubt extended, I think a lot of people would be surprised at how much good faith really is there.
And also, if you take these, I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, if we want to have the end point of these discourses that, you know, we're overdetermined by capitalism, there's these social and economic forces that generate actions that intrude on our beings, conflict with our moral impulses, that set these contexts. Yeah, that's actually true. And that again means you have to pivot. Like, it's not like, okay, all of these just absolutely gargantuan economic and social forces are working. So what's your personal Olympic, like, jumping out of them in individual heroic action? It's, oh shit, that's all true. And of course, look, I keep talking about Sloterdijk. I think the left actually needs to make some comfort with the idea of individual practice, spirituality, search for excellence, and so on. That's great. But at the same time, if we took those realities seriously, you've got to push back from this, like, you know, it's like, yes, should everybody wear their masks? Definitely. But the problem is, and the reason, you know, no one talks about, the CDC was saying a couple of months ago, don't worry about wearing a mask, because they didn't have any fucking masks.
Yeah.
And then the discourse turns into, you're an asshole, you don't wear a mask. Well, you know, sure, but there's an ecosystem behind it. And the problem is the lack of production of the masks anyway.
Yeah. Well, that was what was so depressing to me, was just seeing how, especially as the casualties mounted and as the slow dawning realization that we're just going to kind of shrug our shoulders and say, yeah, we're going to forfeit a fundamental element of any kind of society in terms of protecting people. We're going to further the sense of you are on your own. But I just saw it already. It was all primed. Everyone is going to blame each other for it.
Right. That's the problem.
Liberals are going to blame people for wanting to go out, and it's like everyone is subconsciously responding to their knowledge that nothing's coming to save us, and yet we will still end up blaming each other for discrete individual choices to do this. And now my hope, honestly, is that because this is the whole thing burst in such a violent and unexpected manner, that all of this accumulated horror at the degree to which our social our social infrastructure is non-existent can now be potentially be put to productive use instead of towards just this sterile finger pointing.
Yes. I really, really resonate. It's perfect. Before you go, I want to play this Tucker Carlson clip because I just keep threatening it. So let's do it. And he's really been, I mean, he has kind of an alpha relationship with Trump.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a major part of that goading process here.
People will not forgive weakness. That's the one thing. By the way, that is not a partisan point. It is human nature. Nero is the only Roman emperor whose name most people still remember. Why? Because he abandoned his nation in a time of crisis, and 2,000 years later, we still don't forgive him. Donald Trump's response to these riots, which is ongoing, is the singular test of his presidency. About an hour ago, the president announced that he's going to marshal all available forces, military and civilian, to stop these riots.
Did you want the Kushner one too?
Yeah, let's play the Kushner one too. Then I'll throw to you, Matt. But Kushner first.
No one has more contempt for Donald Trump's voters than Jared Kushner does, and no one expresses it more frequently. In 2016, Donald Trump ran as a law and order candidate because he meant it, and his views remain fundamentally unchanged today. But the president's famously sharp instincts, the ones that won him the presidency almost 4 years ago, have been since subverted at every level by Jared Kushner. This is true on immigration, on foreign policy, and especially on law enforcement. No one has more...
Matt, what do you think of the message from Tucker headquarters?
I didn't know Jared Kushner was Antifa, so apologies to him.
He's a Jew.
For all of his secret underminings of the Trump presidency. I don't know. How are you supposed to square the idea that this guy is a is a world historical figure who's presiding over some sort of awakening and realignment, and also that his dipshit son-in-law is his Rasputin, the guy who lost money in Manhattan real estate. How the hell does that work?
It's like, what we need is it's a great turning and everything's going to change because we need to restore vigor. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But what about the suburban moms who like scandal with Kerry Washington? It's like, I guess you're right, Jared. We shouldn't do martial law.
I mean, the reality that he has just simply never cared about actually being president in any way, I guess that's a bridge too far for Tucker. Tucker should get tough on Trump to the degree that he could like hold him to his values, which he presumably shares with his supporters. But it's a bridge too far to acknowledge that he doesn't have any, because then these people look like fucking suckers, and he can't alienate them that much.
What do you make of? I mean, take it beyond the obvious hypocrisy points, but it is just like fucking incredible to hear the very specific language of law and order and a law and order president as specifically applied to a guy that, like, I mean, you know, like everybody knows Donald Trump's career. I mean, there is just something like comical about and fitting with everything else, because of course there's like multiple justice systems in the country and we know all of this stuff, but just like the idea that it's like the law and order president is the guy who, like, this is probably the only thing that has caught his attention enough to distract him from like trying to, like, you know, cut a deal with China for his daughter to like get panties made in a sweatshop there, whatever.
Yeah. And
he's the law and order president. That's like especially because he's also like the permissive dad. Like, that's just a completely, I think there is some incoherence to that. Like, I get how they work together, but it's like, is Trump just the like, we're all on the Howard Stern show together. It's 1995. It's the, you know, the Boy Scouts. I'm going to make an orgy joke versus like, he's law and order. Well, he represents discipline.
I think on for both liberals and conservatives of all strike, there is this unstated need, this psychic need for Trump to embody some sort of project that they can either oppose or support. The idea that he's president because he was on TV and nobody was really paying attention because most people realize politics doesn't actually matter in their lives, that this shit is on rails, that the political class is largely ornamental, and that therefore, why not have an ornament who is entertaining or at least catches the eye, provides some sort of sparkle, some McLuhanian heat, and that he never represented anything deeper than that. I think both liberals and conservatives are deeply terrified of that prospect, because it means that this political architecture that they've invested all of their energy in is essentially meaningless, and that these people are not the ones making these decisions, which is a thing that they either don't want other people to realize or can't admit even to themselves.
Yes, that they're fixated on a depth that isn't there.
Yeah.
And if
there isn't any depth there, if he just got in there because people kind of checked out and he's the guy on TV, then that has very dire implications for the efficacy of political organization as a project. And that's not something that they can countenance, because it's the only frame of reference they have.
Matt Christman, I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really, really appreciate your commitment and willingness to push the thought process and not be locked in anything, and the heart that goes with that. Really, sincerely, man.
Thank you, man.
So, I guess, guys, we'll take like a really quick break. We're going to get to Artesia in a few minutes, but Matt's going to sign off. And again, thanks, brother.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, so I'm gonna do a quick gem, and obviously there's one thing to talk about, which has been the unrest that's been going on. And I really want to hit like one thing broadly. A lot of people have been mentioning or pointing out the fact that despite all this unrest, the stock market hasn't plummeted, which is, which shows something, one, about the different reality that these people are living in, which has been like borne out by like American history, that these folks don't always see these crises as serious as the rest of us do. In fact, a lot of these activities and what's going on, especially with the police brutality, can be quite good for business. Certainly for the people who build the equipment, sell the tear gas and the surveillance systems that the cops use, things have been very good for them so far. So let's not forget, before we go into the nitty gritty of some of these kind of organizations, that the police already receive significant amount of tools from the U.S. military through, the surplus military equipment, which is from a completely bloated budget. So there's always more opportunity when you see more police brutality for this massive industry. But just like specifically, LRAD, which makes those sonic systems, those like sonic cannons, they recently rebranded actually to a much more ominous sounding corporation called Genesis. They've seen their stock price increase since the crisis began. Smith & Wesson, which not only makes weapons for the police, but they still make most of their money through private sales. Their stock jumped up 28%. Specifically, I wanted to talk about Axon, which makes Taser. They had a massive move in the past few days, with their stock price jumping from around $75 a share all the way up to $95 a share. And this company, not only makes the tasers, but they also make the body cameras and a lot of the surveillance equipment that the police use. So I just wanted to let's think about a little bit of the political economy of this moment, and specifically Axon, so that we understand and do not make mistakes going forward. So obviously you sit there and you say, okay, well, this stock price has jumped up, but it jumped up much more than most of the other organizations that make weapons that the police use, specifically guns and things of that nature. So why was this company moving up in such a dramatic way? It's police reform. Remember that the police departments are such a big business, right? That all of these kind of solutions that people throw around are massive money-making opportunities for the police, right? So these corporations, it doesn't matter to them specifically if like the dynamic changes. What matters to them is the opportunity to make money from selling products. So you're seeing this with things like more surveillance cameras for police departments. You're seeing it with another massive growing industry, implicit bias training, which police departments have been using across the country. Just to give credit, there's a really great piece by Alex Vitale in the Nation about police reform and the failures of it. Minneapolis signed a contract for $5 million over a period of a few years to do implicit bias training with their police officers in 2015, and that did not change the culture of the of the police department. What it did is it allowed the police department to say, we need more money from the city budget, and for corporations and companies to come in and profit off of this. So remember that, like, when we talk about, reform, these are massive money-making opportunities for a lot of different companies, and their bottom line is not fundamentally affected by whether or not the policing actually changes. So this is why I've been 100% saying that this message, defund the police, is 100% the way that we need to be going, pushing forward. Because over this past decade, as you've seen like these ideas of reform, you've just seen larger police budgets, which have not changed the culture and the actions of the police departments, but they've just created new avenues of money for private companies to come in and profit of. And just, to give people the scale of how serious these budgets are for the police departments, and how, if you're like a capitalist or somebody who might have the opportunity to profit from this, these are mouth-watering numbers. New York City, $6 billion, Los Angeles, $3.14 billion out of a $10 billion city budget. Oakland, $264 million in their police department budget out of a $592 million budget. In Minneapolis, $1.6 billion in their budget for 2020, right? I mean, these are huge numbers. And, shout out to, I got these numbers from Luke Derry in GQ magazine. But we need to understand that when we're talking about how we want to deal with this problem, that there's huge money-making opportunities. Policing is big business, and it's been big business for a long time. Not to mention all the things that we've talked about before. The fact that Israel, a lot of these police departments are brought to Israel, or trainers from Israel who basically have learned all their tactics from oppressing Palestinian people. There's a lot of money in policing and a lot of money in police departments, and we need to cut off that tap, because nothing will fundamentally change until we directly address that issue.
Yeah, shout out to the Minneapolis Public Schools Board of Education, which voted unanimously today to terminate the contract with the Minneapolis PD with their SRO officers inside schools and stuff.
Yeah, and just really quickly, just on that, we've hit this before. We hit this at the beginning of the show, but the argument goes like this: you need to defund the police department, one, to stop the carnage and the chaos, and two, because the police should not be involved in all of these social roles that they have in our society, which comes out of racism and white supremacy, and the need of capitalists to basically create populations that are threatened. But also because neoliberalism has completely gutted the social state. It's gutted any kind of social programs that are meant to help people who need help. It's gutted, housing, mental health programs, all those things. We do not need the police to be doing that. And we need to be, cutting the police budgets and using that money to take care of those other programs.
Yeah, I saw a statistic. I'm going to pull it up now. Alora Durancourt, she does a study on northern backlash against the Great Migration. Says police are the only public investment to increase in metro areas with more black migration.
That's incredible.
The only public investment.
Wow.
Police. I mean, that really says everything you need to know about cops.
That's the history of the
and
United
neoliberalism,
States.
Right? That's where
that's incredible.
You are what you invest in, folks.
Yeah. We need to stop investing in people with guns roaming our streets.
It's insane.
Should we take a second before?
Yeah, let's take a little break here. Let's see if we get Michael back on and see you. Live.
Welcome back. Postgame. Michael Brooks here, of course, with the team and crew. Artesia, Balthrop. Artesia.
Hello. I'm definitely glad to be with you guys. This was the highlight of my day. If I could find a highlight today, knowing that I would be able to chat with you guys and connect with you and dialogue was definitely a hurrah.
So, definitely likewise. And I definitely miss our pre-quarantine hangout sessions where we figure it all out. But how are you? Talk to us. What's going on? How are you taking this all in?
Well, you know what? I thought this morning, lucky for me, I think I got this down to a routine. I'm like, if I cry in the morning, like at the top of the day, I have space to work through all the rest of my emotions and eventually get to productivity. So like I figured that out before this week and probably last week, and I'm glad I did, because that's been a very helpful tip for, going through the day and riding the wave of so many things to feel at once. So I think you should all try it, cry at the top of the day, get that out the way, and then get to strategizing and dialoguing and building with folks for the rest of the day. So that's where I am. That's how I feel. Or that's just at the top right now of what's happening with me.
Do you think, I don't know if we should try this. I'm really hesitating, but I'm wondering if you should take your earbuds off and just speak into the mic.
Oh.
That might sound better. People used to complain when I used the earbuds all the time, and now I'm starting to understand them.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, see, I think that's
have
better.
A button that says.
I think that's better. Do you guys think that's better?
No, but I
think that's
can't.
better.
I have to switch the audio that I'm. Oh, unmute.
I mean, we can hear you. You're good. I hear you.
But I can't hear you guys.
Oh, you can't hear me.
Yeah, I can't. I can barely hear you. You're on my earbuds, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Forget it. Stay on the earbuds. My bad.
Okay.
I was just trying a little real-time production here.
Oh. Actually, I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay. So this is actually very holistic. So get up, cry, get in your body, and then spend the rest of the day strategizing, protesting, working, doing whatever it may be. But you have to clear out in the beginning.
I have to clear it out in the beginning. And I don't want anybody watching this to think that I'm one of those kind of people before this moment. I wasn't.
No.
Only my siblings really know how to make me cry by saying, the simplest of things. I was not that kind of person, but I have gotten to that place. Since quarantine, since protests, and just all of it in the last couple of months. I've gotten to that. Daily cry is very helpful. Get it out the way. Some days it's a couple minutes, other days, anything can set you off. But I try to keep it at the top of the day.
You're somebody, though, who's always been able to see multiple playing fields at once. You do have one of them, you're extremely strategic. I mean, as someone who legit in so many situations sees avenues that not everybody necessarily sees, but like in a grounded way, not in a fantasy way, in a very real way, do you, amidst the horror we're in, but also some of the real surge of energy, it's very good that Americans show that they're not so docile in and of itself, I think. I know.
Yep.
What do you see? I mean, is there anything that you see positive? Any pathway forward you see that could be good?
Today, I started a little confused because, today was supposed to be, Blackout Tuesday, and that didn't go so well.
No.
A lot of people, that didn't go so well at all. And, a
No.
lot of the people, folks with really good intentions, some of whom I got to see through the work had, some really good intentions, but that, just not great strategy today. So saw that roll out. But one of the things that I arrived at this morning after dialogue with so many different folks, and like you said, just a vast range, some community organizers, folks in media, my mom, my family, talking to a lot of people, I was reminded of the importance of coalition building. And I think what's happening right now, or what needs to happen in order for a path forward, and that I see, and I'm very positive about it, is that people are realizing the coalition may have to include some folks you don't, like all the time. But
that's called the coalition.
Yeah, that's what it is. But sometimes we kind of forget that. We throw that out the window. Believe that people have to, we all have to be on the same page, check all the boxes. And I'm like, nah, at this point, we all agree that this shit is really fucked up. And if you agree with that, let's get to work. And a lot of people are like, I agree with that. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get to work. So that is, a little bit of positivity. I think a lot of people want to get to work, from what I'm hearing and how I'm engaging and fellowshipping at the moment. A lot of people want to get to work. So I'm with it. Let's go.
What about, could you talk about your own, just lifelong New Yorker, you've lived in different places in Brooklyn. What is your, is the NYPD, is what it is, or is it something that has shifted and changed in conjunction with what Giuliani did to the city, with what Bloomberg did to the city, with different ways of hyper-capitalism in the city? What is your historical perception of the NYPD?
God, I know on this show, you've discussed, so many people have discussed just historically what the police are and what they've grown out of. So I just feel like whether I'm a New Yorker or a resident of Los Angeles or Atlanta or any, big city, we all have the same relationship to the cops. I think in my experience, in my personal experience in New York City, it is what it is. It is everything that we all talk about it to be. It is stop and frisk before it was stop and frisk. It was shoot, Black people before George Floyd or, anybody else, or Amadou Diallo. And I have lived through this with the NYPD for quite some time. And, right now, I think we're all trying to figure out new tactics, right? Because we've just lived through it so much. I have lived through it so much. So where I am grasping right now to understand is what else are we supposed to do? But my entire life I've lived through this with the NYPD. My entire life, my mom's entire life, with the NYPD. This is generational at this point.
Yeah. And as we're talking, I can hear the helicopters outside of my window.
I wasn't sure if you could hear them in the background of your house or my house, because we have.
Did you freeze?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're good. Okay. I think, no,
okay,
you know what? I froze for a second. My
got it.
Sorry about that. All right. So I want to play a couple of clips here. But first, this is just a report. I want to keep some track of this. Obviously, now this is a nationwide thing. This is about policing. This is about racism. This is about class structure. This is about capitalism. This is about Corona. And the specific incident that set this that we need to remember was the murder of George Floyd that literally all of us have seen. I will say on that metric, the polls show that I think 96% of Americans across every metric, as in there's only 4%, God knows who the fuck they are. I mean, we know who they are, but thank God it's only 4, do not think that these officers 96% think these officers need to be charged to the fullest extent. Artesia, we're seeing your feet now. What happened? I'm sure many people.
Don't judge me. I'm so bad at this. I just like
no judgment. No judgment. I'm sure. Look, plenty of people are going to be impressed, particularly during Corona with the pedicure. So you know this. So
that's don't throw me out there like that. That's an old picture.
No. It's you stay fresh even in quarantine. So let me reset though, because this would be awkward if it got clipped to go on that diversion. So the base of the spark off, just like in Tunisia in 2011, there was a fruit seller who was smacked in the face by the police. They took away his ability to earn what meager living he had, and he self-emulated. I believe. I think that was the trajectory in Tunisia. Now, as I'm saying it, I feel like I need to double check it. Anyways, there are always these clear precipitating events, the things that open up into wider things. And this precipitating event was the cold-blooded murder of George Floyd that we've all seen. And I want to play this clip from Al Jazeera, though, because I do want to keep tracking this. And this just basically, the family has done their own autopsy. And guess what? This autopsy confirms what everybody saw.
The autopsy shows that Mr. Floyd had no underlying medical problem that caused or contributed to his death.
That has demonstrators on the street questioning authority.
You know, I don't think he was going to have a heart attack that day and pass away without what happened to him on the streets here.
The dueling autopsies has eroded the already diminished faith that people here in the streets have in American institutions. First, many of the protesters, of course, lost faith in the police. Then they lost faith in the politicians who sent the police in to crack down on them. Now they're questioning the coroner's office.
Tell them we are one! Tell them we are one!
I don't trust them. I can't. How could you after this keeps happening? When they try to hide it, they try to cover it up.
That the institutions that we're supposed to trust, police officers, law enforcement, healthcare, just keep betraying us and letting us down.
So, as sick as that is, I mean, that is the growing reality check for a lot of people. Yeah,
right.
These institutions don't deserve trust, right?
I mean, just a slight correction to what you said. The feud that blew this up, yes, was sparked by the death of Mr. George Floyd, but we had a couple of these incidents on top of each other very rapidly. We had Breonna Taylor, a Black woman, killed in her home. We had run.
Can you talk about that real quick, Artesia? The woman in Kentucky. Can you talk about that, please?
The facts, I guess, it was a raid, but a mistaken identity. They went into, I'm believing they went into the wrong house. I'm getting all these, there's so much to process at once. But she was killed in that raid, and her boyfriend fired a shot to defend them, was then arrested and held on attempted murder of a police officer. Her story has gotten a little buried in all of this. So I definitely want to make sure that she's included in that conversation, because it was a simmer and then an explosion, but that happened right on, like, days before George Floyd. So everyone had been on edge. Everyone had been on edge in the last couple of days. Actually, last 2 months, we've 3 months now, we've all been on edge. So let's remember that conversation.
Thank you.
And
Go.
oh, I'm sorry, I had to get that point, and I cut you off. Wait, back to this autopsy confirming what we all knew and actually did not matter.
Yeah, that this is that just, I mean, look, there isn't that much to add to it. I like the way they did that report because they just did this as this kind of like ongoing build of, actually, I think just a lot of trust that already isn't there, just getting pushed in everybody's face. And then maybe like the expanding the concentric circle of that lack of trust and then saying like, of course there isn't trust because let's look at what's happening. We got to play, as well, just a couple of examples. We won't do, we'll save the other clip. We'll save clip number 5 for next week, but I want to just do 3 and 4. And really there could be any of these. Look, there's a lot of things that are happening. As we were talking about before, if you've been out at these protests, the energy is overwhelmingly actually extraordinarily human and positive and courageous and extraordinary. Now,
and peaceful, you know, like gathered here in Bed-Stuy yesterday, and there was so much peace. There's so much peace, and of course we know the media spins and is only going to highlight looting and burning things down. Which to that I'm also just like burn the shit down. I don't really care at this point, but there's so much peace. There's so much.
That's an opinion, not a directive for fucking people that watch it. Yeah.
Sorry, you got 100,000 fans. It's not a directive. But when I do say burn it down, I come back, I get into these conversations, and folks just want to get to work, not burning it down for real, literally, but figuratively, they want to roll up their sleeves and get to work. They're so inspired. It's something that's been building, though. You know, like the movement has been building, and more people are in it. More people are there.
Yeah, and uproot and dismantle, and absolutely. But I want to just look. The point of this is we have to just be very real, and there is endless examples of this. The police have been rioting across America. Now, you can find different examples of different incidents. And again, I'm going to be very clear. I don't romanticize shit. I don't have an opinion on anybody that has come from an actual context deciding to do whatever. You know, if you live by a target, you're on the receiving end of these things, you do whatever. I have zero comment on that. Maybe if in some instances, you know, you're trying to have a vicarious thrill or whatever, yeah, I do have a critique of that. I think the only like moral dividing line I see is attacking innocent people of any sort. And guess what? Who have done the vast, overwhelming majority of attacks on people? Let's be real, and let's watch some of these clips of police rampaging across this country. This is in Philadelphia. And this is the type of shit that we're about to play, that this is, I mean, if this is happening in Venezuela or wherever, I mean, the only place that this isn't headline news if this was happening would actually be in Palestine. But that's another question. Go ahead. So those are to be really clear, those are nonviolent protesters wedged into a bridge, getting blasted with tear gas.
They were, you know, and they were left there. You know, a lot of reports are led them there, knowing that they could not get out once they start firing on them. That was definitely one of these moments that was just so hard to watch, and I'm going to try to not get emotional, but to know that like the cops have so much hatred for their citizens that they would really lead them to a place where they could not escape and fire on them. And I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable that these are paramilitary organizations that do not have any form of democratic accountability to either citizens that they're supposed to serve or for the politicians that are theoretically supposed to govern them. Let's play clip number 4 as well. This is from Louisville, in fact.
Oh, the Louisville clip was a story. I have it right here. It's about
I'm sorry.
The National Guard.
This is the National Guard?
Yeah, I don't know if y'all are familiar, but
go ahead.
I can just, for people who are unaware, the National Guard, somebody was shot, and they killed a man in the protest there. So the National Guard was deployed and the police was there as well, and they fired the police chief, but there's still a lot of murkiness about what actually happened, and it's just an example of how frightening the situation is, especially when we're talking about not only having the paramilitary force of the police department in these areas, but literally deploying the National Guard, a military force.
That's a David McAtee who was shot by the police in Louisville.
Who I believe owned a restaurant. He served police officers
for free.
For free. And he was killed by them. I do want to play 2 more clips. I don't even know if we have them, guys, but they're very quick. One, I want to play the cars going through the crowd in Brooklyn. And then I want to play a clip of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. and martial law cannot be lost sight of. So can we, staying on the police theme first, can we get the trucks going through Brooklyn? That should be pretty handy quickly.
Yeah, just give me 1 second then.
Of course. And Artesia, jump in, please.
I mean, I'm so emotional. I'm really just so emotional watching my fellow citizens be disregarded and just disregarded by the police. Like we pay them. We actually pay them, and this is how they treat us. Like that's the part that it really is working up my tears here. Mm-hmm. I don't want to cry here for your audience today.
Okay, I'm shocked I haven't cried on air yet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. So I think there is absolutely zero shame in crying on air. Please.
No, I got it.
Here this is.
All right, this is in their time. Let's watch this. Or in there was footage like this in LA. A protester was hit in LA. This is, and Bill de Blasio, Bill de Blasio is a pussy. It's easy to dunk on him. There's no question. It's a failure.
He's literally afraid of the cops.
He's also literally afraid of the cops because they doxed his fucking daughter. And you know what he should have done? I'm going to just shut up in 1 second. But when they did that work stoppage several years ago, when he said some piddling thing about, hey, don't be racist when you're policing. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to enforce quality of life crimes. And you know what happened? They did a work stoppage. They stopped bothering people for petty shit. Like, we're not going to bust up on you for smoking a joint or whatever. We're not going to do any policing. Guess what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. And he should have used that moment to been like, why are you all trying to talk me out of your jobs?
We were absolutely fine when they did that. We had no increase in crime. The city wasn't overwrought with burglaries. Like, it was, he keeps missing these moments with the cop. And then they disrespect him They turn their backs on him when he's spoken at, funerals. Like, they don't give a fuck about you. NYPD really doesn't give a fuck about you, de Blasio. So I don't know why you're riding for them at this right now.
He's scared. I mean, I forgot, I didn't pull it up, but there was a great tweet who summarized it. He said, basically, the way it goes is de Blasio goes, you shouldn't be racist. And also the police were justified in torching this nursing home because they felt scared. And then a week later, the NYPD union Twitter account says, Bill de Blasio should be killed on the street.
Right.
That's the exact arc.
They are in a very toxic relationship.
Very toxic relationship.
I would say
how to distill it, Artesia.
Them at this point, just get rid of both of them.
All right, one more piece of sounds, because look, Donald Trump, and I said this before, I think for the vast majority of Donald Trump's presidency, the rhetoric of calling him authoritarian, calling him a fascist, I think it has distracted from where he has deeply abused people, like, as an example, kidnapping and terrorizing migrants and asylum seekers and children. But it has also trivialized what is just a continuity of policy overall under Trump, particularly under Republicans, but also many Democratic policies, the policies of the modern stage of neoliberalism we're in. Trump is the natural outgrowth, not the precondition. And it's also opened the way for a lot of opportunistic, mediocre resistance people. As my friend Aisha Ahmed tweeted out today, she said, it turns out resistance is a lot harder and takes a lot more courage than just calling Trump fat on Twitter. And I think that those things are absolutely true. And I also think that even as we absolutely correctly critique that whole language economy and hysteria, we have to keep real and current with events on the ground. And what Trump attempted to do last night and opened the door for, along with the rhetoric of absolute scum psychopaths like Tom Cotton and the goading of Tucker Carlson, is an acceleration in the authoritarian direction. And Washington, D.C. itself, because it is not a state and because it does not have rights, is in a state of a form of martial law. Nonviolent protesters outside of the White House were tear gassed because Donald Trump was embarrassed because he's a fucking punk and went to a bunker. And he needed to show he was a man by weirdly holding a Bible. And now we have footage like military choppers, like tanks, and like this, the head of the Joint Chiefs in Washington, D.C., surveying the situation.
And freedom of speech, that's perfectly fine. We support that. We took an oath of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America to do that, to protect everyone's rights, and that's what we do. We've got the D.C. National Guard out here, and I'm just checking seeing how well they're doing, that's all. And freedom of speech.
Yep.
That's fucking extraordinary. That is extraordinary.
Crazy. Okay, so my question, right, because I try not to watch any of him on my TV screen. I watch the clip. And I realized that they were showing us a live view of the protest as Trump was walking, getting ready to walk across the street. So you actually watch them, like, attack the peaceful protesters and like shoot tear gas at them. Like, you watch that at the same time. And I'm like, did they cut that feed on Fox News? I was just wondering if anybody document that? Did the viewers of Fox News not watch as peaceful protesters get attacked so he could then walk across the street to the church?
I don't know what they did on Fox, but what disturbs me is I think there's a big element of the Fox audience that would love to see protesters get tear gassed for non-violently protesting. I'm sorry, guys. I should have set this up before. I just don't have this in front of me. What is that general's name? We should always say his name.
Yeah, it's a General Milley.
General Milley, right. General Milley. So, no, I don't know what they did, Artesia. And I think, that synchronizing, though, calling for the 7 p.m. curfew with that photo op is, that's the height That's the murder politics. That's the Achille Bimbe. That's it. And I don't know. I think at the same time, I think we need to be open, and I think we need to have a big mind, because I also think that a lot of Americans are really all over the place. They want normalcy. They want order. They do not hate the police. They do not hate the military. They actually hold those institutions in a lot of esteem. And then on the other hand, I actually think they really are appalled by these murders. I think they actually have an understanding of why people are protesting. And I think they certainly increasingly deplore Trump, and they might even have some openness to the broader systemic issues we need to get into. I think you need to meet most people where they're at, which is in a place of extraordinary paradox.
No, I mean, to be honest, I really do agree with you. I said a long time ago, guys, we cannot go get the maggots, right? We cannot go get these ardent Trump supporters and keep arguing with them. Like, we have to go get the people who are ready to jump ship, or who already jump ship, and really work within their understanding of what's happening to try to get rid of this fucker. I am not about to appeal to people's parents and families and friends who would cheer for peaceful protesters to be tear gassed so he could walk across the street. Like, I just can't see where me and those folks would ever agree on anything. So, like, I'm saying to folks, if you think that shit is fucked up, then come sit at my table so we can have a conversation about what we do next. The rest of y'all, I'm just not with it. I'm not.
Yeah, I love that, because I think I think that the part of the job actually the last couple of years has just actually been to push back against that complacent liberal impulse. Everybody, no, you said this, you did that. Actually, to be really like, you know what? Yes. If you voted for Trump because he thought he was going to offer you X and Y and Z about the economy, if you are checked out, if you voted for Trump because of whatever, if you thought this, if you thought that, we have to look at what that 10% opening is. And at the same time, that is that overt cruelty really is like a very basic dividing line. I think that actually is the clearest test, Artesia. If you look at that on television, and there might be people of all sorts of bad politics and all sorts of this and all sorts of that, but they see that and they go, that's fucked up. What's that about? And if that's true, there's room to work from. If they see that and they go, I should have done that a long time ago. That is a person where, I think ultimately you can't be spiritually fully close to anybody. But in terms of like an immediate, like that is in this moment, in this context, that's a political enemy, pure and simple. That doesn't even require all the melodrama. That just is. No. You took information. No. If you saw that, you like that, that's it.
You don't believe in my humanity. You don't believe in my rights. So I don't think there's anything that we could talk about as a Black person. I'm done trying to convince people of my humanity. I'm just not doing it. So
absolutely.
Nene Leak speaks out on that one.
Absolutely. And that's just so fucking clear. And I know, because I have the impulse to push and see like, where, like how people get, where it can be pushed, where it can be opened, where it can be challenged. If you sit and you watch that, or you watch those cops at that bridge in Philadelphia, no. There's no gray. There's no opening. There's no place for that shit. Anyway, shape and form, full stop, period. And that's the duality too. You need that openness, but you need the clarity. You need the wisdom. You need the compassion.
Right. Now, especially for me, we watched for a couple weeks, people show up on state capitals with rifles, big ass guns. I mean, I wouldn't even know where you get guns that big. And they showed up on their state capitals, and they pushed cops, they blocked ambulances, they blocked in streets where medical vehicles could not get through. They screamed at doctors and nurses who were trying to tell them to wear masks, and they made it home. They made it home in one piece. So we should have the same respect. If it is a, us versus them thing, like, then I think these people, protesters, should have the same respect.
We know police are out policing ideology. Artesia, couple of minutes before we wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us back? You began with us with some great advice. First of all, want you back on again in another couple of weeks if you can. Can you be one of our? I mean, you were crew in real, but now you got to be one of our post-game regulars. Can you do that?
I would love to join, especially as the conversations develop further, and there's more details to share with people. As someone who's on the media and entertainment side of things, I feel like it is my job to amplify the message and make sure those things are always being communicated appropriately out there, whatever. So thank you for giving me your platform. I don't know what I'm going to come back and share with folks, but just know that there's work that's being done and things are being discussed, and people are strategizing, and in any way that I can help get that strategy out to a wider audience, I will be here. I will do that. And I just want to rap with my homies when I can.
I was gonna say, share my platform. This is mi casa, su casa, Artesia. Damn.
Of course, I know. Like, I just want to come.
Welcome to share my platform. Let's stop. I will never use the word platform again.
Okay, all right. I'll ban platform from my vocabulary as well. I told you, I just been on the phone.
Platform.
This is what we've been talking about today. How to use our platforms, especially in the wake of a real messy rollout of Blackout Tuesday. It's like, okay, well, I think we got to learn how to use these platforms a little better, because it looks like we had a really bad algorithm problem and a communication problem today.
I'm just so thankful that you're front and center of those, because we need you. Artesia, I love you. Hopefully we can talk again in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for doing this, taking time to join us. Matt and David, of course, thank you as always. I love you both too, in fact. And I appreciate each and every one of you. We're going to have a two-part series actually on Pakistan coming. Next week, a two-parter with Cedric Richard. I can't believe I'm friendly with him. Cedric Johnson, who did this brilliant work against the technical fix to policing reform, and also really orienting policing in the class structure, and his historical work. I'm really excited for that. And guys, next week, Noam Chomsky's on. So stay tuned, spread the word, stay strong, stay safe, don't think yourself to paralysis, and there is always a sliver of hope. So stay safe, everybody. Be well. See you soon.
Thank you, friends. See you soon.